What's up, Crowdfunding Nation? Salvador Briggman here, and welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast, where we decode, demystify, and get behind the scenes of what's happening with major Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and other crowdfunding campaigns. If you've been listening to me on this show, you've probably been getting some incredible episodes recently when it comes to the case studies, what works in order to get funding from the crowd. And, to me, this has been a passion of mine since I got started in the crowdfunding industry in 2012 with my blog, crowdcrux.com. And then I progressed to doing podcasts because not enough people were really being tuned into what's happening behind the scenes. And I want to share with you, really just pull back the curtain, the inner workings of a successful crowdfunding campaign to understand what these guys are doing from a strategic and a tactical standpoint in order to get funding from the crowd. So by listening to this podcast, you're going to hear from real-world success stories, and today is no different because we spoke with an incredible nonprofit organization that actually decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign and was able to raise over $140,000 from the crowd from more than 450 backers and over 1,000% funded with a new software app. Now, if you're listening to this and you've been listening to any of my other podcasts, you might be like, Sal, you said software is such a challenging category. And that's true because software is one of the hardest categories out there to be successful when it comes to a Kickstarter campaign, but it's extremely valuable if you do see success on the platform. So what I would say is that if you're someone who's interested in launching a new product, you're looking to get funding from the crowd, if you're trying to do a software campaign or a web app, I would definitely listen to today's podcast episode. Or if you're a nonprofit organization and you're wondering, how can you raise money for a new cause? How can you incorporate the crowd into your next fundraiser? And more importantly, how do you build something along with them that they actually want to participate in a really cool new campaign? So you're going to hear that and more on today's podcast episode that we did with the Joy of Living app, where you can meditate anytime, anywhere. Meditation has had a huge impact on my own life and has helped me focus and concentrate over the years. And the Joy of Living app has a really interesting slant and really interesting take when it comes to meditation. The other thing I want to mention before we get into today's podcast episode is that if you're the kind of person that just kind of wants to skip to the finish line, you really just want to understand from a nuts and bolts perspective, what do you have to do in order to get a campaign funded? How do you build a strong foundation? What's the paint by numbers formula that goes into racking up massive funding on websites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo? And you're wondering how to do that sooner rather than later. I got a great book out there on Audible, which you can download and you can listen to on the go, called the Kickstarter Launch Formula. That book is, if you want to check this out, the Kickstarter Launch Formula on Audible. You can check that out at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link will take you there. And actually, if you go through that link, you can also get a free 30-day trial of Audible, and you get a free copy of the Kickstarter Launch Formula at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. In addition, another incredible resource for anyone who's getting started with a new campaign, whether it's your first or your 10th campaign, you got to check out my free course on Kickstarter, which goes through the inner workings of getting funding, traction, traffic, marketing, promotion, you name it. This is an incredible free course if you do want to show up right to that campaign. And you want to make sure that you're dotting your I's and you're crossing your T's, and more importantly, that your methods are going to work in terms of getting traffic and funding for your campaign. Go and check out this free course at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. The link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter, and you can enter your name and email, and you'll start getting some lessons from me. Without further ado, let's dive into today's podcast episode and discover how this creator was able to raise over $140,000, and it's coming up right after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. We are speaking with a campaign that's attracted over $140,000 on Kickstarter, more than 450 backers, and we are lucky enough to have a member of the team here today. Beth, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sal.
Definitely. Maybe we can get started and you can just introduce the community to Tergar and also a bit about your product here.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Tergar International is a nonprofit, and our mission is to teach meditation. And we have a program that's called The Joy of Living that is based on a New York Times bestselling book of the same name by a Tibetan meditation teacher called Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche. And we have been teaching that style of meditation first through the book and then through a series of workshops. Then we started to move the courses online, and now we're developing an app to deliver that those same teachings.
Exciting. So you guys are an established nonprofit, right? From what I understand. How long have you been working at Tergar? How long have you been a part of this?
Well, I started as a student and a member of what we call a local practice group, and then I started to, about 15 years ago. Tergar turned 15 this year, and so I kind of joined from the beginning, and then I became a volunteer working with the organization, and then I got hired as a contractor and then brought on full time in 2016. So I have a pretty long history with the organization. I started doing marketing and fundraising, and now I focus primarily on fundraising and philanthropy.
Very neat, very neat. So from what I understand, there's many different understandings, right, of meditation and sort of the benefits there. For you, what really awakened your passion or drew you to meditation? How is that method that you guys use? How is that unique or different? Can you just talk a tiny bit to that?
Yeah. So for me, I was having a lot of anxiety and mixed with depression at the same time. And I had read so many things about how meditation could help, but I found it difficult to, sort of get going on it. I would read a book or I would do a guided meditation, and then I just wouldn't for a while. And then my husband actually found the book, The Joy of Living, and brought it home. And we read that together. And the approach is really just so simple and natural. It's like I had a wrong idea before about what meditation is. Like I thought it meant that you had to be 1000% peaceful all the time or empty your mind completely. And it isn't. It's really just about actually being aware of what's happening. And just the awareness is the essence of meditation. And so it turns out to be pretty simple and anybody can do it. And and so that's when I started to get, I guess, a little more serious about it when I found out how simple it really was.
And I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about meditation, maybe they've tried it one time and they end up quitting just because of frustration, or their mind is wandering and they don't really have a teacher or a guide. And it can be one of those subjects where people have had some experience with it, but it could have not gotten the benefits that they want, right? So it sounds like you sort of have a simpler way to go about that. Out of curiosity, so I mean, thinking about fundraising, you have a lot of experience there. What led you to decide to embark on the Kickstarter journey? Why? What really drew you to that platform?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this is really, we hadn't tried anything like Kickstarter before. We hadn't gone outside of traditional methods for fundraising. But we had a meeting with some kind of VIP supporters. And during that, and we talked about how we were planning to develop the app, and we knew, apps are kind of expensive to develop. So we were talking about how we might be able to raise the funds for that. And someone suggested crowdfunding. And we actually have another member of our community who's done a lot of different types of crowdfunding. And I reached out to her and she's like, yeah, I think that would be a great idea for this particular, product and project. And, and from a kind of strategic point of view, it's a great way for us to get the joy of living in front of a new audience, people who hadn't heard of us before.
Did you have any anxiety as you were beginning to start on that path of, working on a Kickstarter and getting this out there? Did you have any thoughts in the back of your mind, any kind of anxiety going into the process, or was it pretty easy?
Well, I'm prone to anxiety, as I mentioned earlier, so I probably still have some anxiety, but I did because it's so new and because it's so different. But one thing about actually the Joy of Living program is that, you learn to be more open to things that maybe might have been scarier in the past. And so we're viewing this as, hey, it's an experiment. And sometimes experiments, work, and that's fantastic. And sometimes they don't, but you still learned something. So it was a little anxiety inducing, but at the same time, very exciting, very motivating to work on.
Right. And I love that message, this idea of like viewing it like an experiment, right? And kind of looking at it more so through that lens, more like a scientific lens, right? So in terms of the app, I mean, we understand like you now have developed this new method with meditation, make it a lot easier. How do you feel like the app is going to really enhance that experience for users and for people all over?
Well, I feel that, for better or for worse, technology is ubiquitous and almost everyone has a phone in their pocket. And a lot of people, it is already integrated into their daily lives. This is, just sort of how they operate. And what we're trying to do with the Joy of Living program is show you how awareness, compassion, and wisdom practices can be integrated into your daily life, the same way. It's not something different from your life. And so, having access then to resources and tools that at your fingertips with that phone you already have in your pocket is a great way to help reinforce that integration. And also from our standpoint as a nonprofit with a mission to reach a lot of people, we know that the vast majority of people who are accessing the internet are only doing that through a mobile phone. A lot of people don't have a desktop computer. And so we're actually making these teachings a lot more accessible by making it available through a mobile app.
I think one of the things I like too, just looking at the page, is this idea of your progress, right? And for me, that's kind of my trouble is like I'll do really well at a habit for a week or a couple of days, and then I'll totally forget, right? And you kind of fall off. But it sounds like you can also kind of track a little bit of how that's been incorporated into your life.
Yeah, you find that, tracking a streak is, really motivating for people. So the app keeps track of the amount of time that you've meditated, the number of days in a row that you've meditated, but also the emphasis, especially in the beginning, is not necessarily on diving in big time. We know that the best way to develop a habit is to just be consistent, even if it's a short amount of time. So one of the key messages, at least in the beginning, is short times, but many times. And, that way having the ability to just pick up your phone and start a meditation when you have a 5-minute break in between meetings or something like that, it's just right there. It's really handy.
Right. In thinking about the campaign, if you were to imagine the night before you went live with this, before you really unveiled the Kickstarter or people knew about it, what was kind of going through your mind the night before you went live with?
Yeah, great question. Well, I was nervous and excited. Like I didn't know what to expect, honestly. And so I really just didn't know what to expect. So it was really a very pleasant surprise and a nice feeling to kind of watch the numbers go up like you can on after the campaign goes live. We were watching it like it was television. It's very exciting. Yeah.
What are some of the responses or messages or reasons you see people taking action? Have you gotten any kind of feedback or people writing in or anything like that?
Yeah, people are very excited about this idea. As part of the rewards, people can get a 1 year or a lifetime access to the premium version of the app. And so a lot of people are, excited about that and interested to try it. People are also interested in getting a copy of the app for someone that they know to be able to share this. And a lot of backers are actually backing without a reward just because they think this is a wonderful, way to help spread well-being more globally.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. How would you compare sort of the mechanism or the way that this campaign works with crowdfunding versus your previous fundraising experience? Or can you even compare them? How would you, relate those two?
Oh, yeah. Good question. So, people have the opportunity to get a reward in this style of funding, and whereas not so much in traditional fundraising. And I think that's exciting to the supporter, to the donor. But one thing that I think has been really helpful is that the way on the campaign page, anyone who visits that page can see the progress, the growth, how much has been raised, how many people are backing. If you look at the community tab, you can see where, how many different places supporters are coming from. And normally we don't have that kind of information available for our traditional style fundraising campaign. So I think that that's been kind of exciting for our community as well.
What effect do you think that has? So making that more publicly available, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm talking to our engineering team about how we can implement a similar type of tracking and reporting for our standard fundraising, because I just think it's been so motivating to people. So yeah, I think it's been very helpful as a nonprofit. And I did read a lot that, for ahead of time, that Kickstarter is actually a really great platform for nonprofits, and that nonprofits tend to have a higher success rate than the standard population. So yeah, it's been really valuable for us. It is a lot of work, though. I will say that. Right. It is a lot of work. Yeah.
Right. A lot of work. One of the things I like is, just seeing the way the community has kind of rallied around your specific app. And, we can talk a tiny bit more about that, but I think it's quite powerful just to see that momentum and the excitement, right, participating in the campaign. One other quick question I had while we're sort of on the topic is, for other nonprofits out there considering going down this path, do you have any advice or any thoughts on what they should do to have a successful campaign? Any kind of major items that they must have in order to be successful? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think that there are a lot of different kinds of crowdfunding. And if you wanted to do a Kickstarter, you need to understand that you can't just do sort of general fundraising, operating budget fundraising through Kickstarter. You need to have a new product, something that you're building. And so that's why this was perfect for us with the app. But if you are a nonprofit and you don't have that kind of a thing, there are other platforms that are, really valuable, where you could do that kind of general fundraising. So I think that it's kind of worth exploring as an alternative method. A lot of the traditional fundraising is, I mean, part of that is the ubiquitous technology that we were talking about. I mean, things are just changing. The way that people do things is changing. And so it's really good to be, open to that change and looking around and saying, okay, well, what's out there that we could try that would be different, that might be exciting for our community?
The other thing I'll add to that, and I think this really stands out well on your campaign, is just seeing the progression of all of your cool like concept designs, and you're thinking out like the user interface of the app, and even seeing it begin to work. Like you can just see the work that your team is putting in, and over time how that's becoming more and more, fully fleshed out app, which I found to be really exciting looking at your page.
Yeah, and we have a big meeting on Tuesday of next week where we're going to be getting a peek at the very latest in the development phase. So I'll probably have an exciting update to post on our page after that.
Super cool, super cool. So at the first, you're a little bit anxious, and then it seemed like it started to go pretty well, right, when it comes to the campaign. One other question I had, like on the marketing or tactical side, was, do you feel like if you were to look back, was there anything you would have done differently, or anything you would have done more of when it comes to the marketing or when it comes to the promotion?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're doing a really good job. I mean, what we just try to be like straightforward and open with our community about what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And, we've been utilizing email and social media and things like that. I think that if there was anything, maybe I might have spent a little more time up front doing some research into the target markets to understand that a little bit better. But, we've adjusted our messaging sort of as we go, which is fine. That's, typical as well. But that might be the only thing was, maybe understanding what would have resonated with people right from the get-go.
It's pretty incredible, just the power, like you mentioned, of email marketing. Because I think a lot nowadays people think like social media, right? And we think all these other kind of things that are catching our attention. But email marketing is so incredibly powerful, right, as a way to get people on the page. So it's great to hear you mention
Oh,
that.
yeah, absolutely. I think our biggest asset as an organization is our email list, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think we see a lot more engagement that way than through any other channel.
So in looking at this process and this journey, and really thinking about, why you were doing this, what has been most rewarding to you, or what has really been the most enjoyable part of getting this out there?
It's been really rewarding to hear people tell us how excited they are about this new product. And we just got a long email this morning that randomly came in that was saying that how happy they are about this new app. And yeah, so just kind of feeling like, yeah, we're doing something that people value. We're going in the right direction. It's very rewarding.
I can imagine. So, and a lot of the times, whether that's like a viewer or someone who maybe is a supporter, they don't have a chance to maybe have a dialogue, right? But when you have something ongoing like a campaign, it gives them that opportunity to kind of shed their voice or to share that with you. And it kind of invites that feedback, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, first of all, looking at the campaign, where can people go to learn more about the Joy of Living app? Where can they go to learn more about this project?
Well, on Kickstarter, you can search for Tergar, Tergar, or Joy of Living app and find our page there. And then we also have a website at tergar.org.
Got it. So I'll make sure to include those links in the chat, in the description. And I just have one or two more questions here. So the first is, and I think this is, great opportunity, looking at a broader view, as a nonprofit organization, in really examining your experience. You have a ton of experience, right, with Tergar and fundraising. Do you see the landscape changing at all for organizations out there when it comes to fundraising or when it comes to, building their base?
Absolutely. I think that, the younger generations sometimes get a bad rap for, maybe not being so serious, but that isn't the case at all. Young people right now are really, really care about social issues and making the world a better place. And maybe they don't support charities in the same traditional way as their parents or grandparents did. And so we have to evolve and kind of be where they are as well. So, the younger people today are incredibly generous with their time and with their talent and with their finances, but maybe they express that in a different way than the previous generations did. So, yeah, it's in our best interest to embrace that and keep up with it.
Yeah, well said. In the way in which people are finding out news and finding out about new announcements, that's also changing as well.
Yeah.
So one other question I had for you here before we begin to wrap this up would be, I think we've talked a lot about this idea of going through meditation to alleviate things such as brain fog and being scattered and, having the stillness and focus. One of the ones you've consistently mentioned is this idea of joy. And I was just kind of curious what really that you meant by that, or what joy means to you in that way.
Oh, fantastic question. Yeah. So our teacher, Mingyur Rinpoche, always talks about it, it's this happiness, this inner joy that doesn't really depend on outside circumstances. And the example he gives is, you could feel really happy after a cup of coffee, but that's not going to necessarily last more than maybe an hour or so. And so what we're talking about is the ability to just, feel okay and everything's fine and I'm comfortable and I'm safe. And, even with sort of craziness happening around you. And so it may not be this kind of joy that bubbles out in giggles or whatever, but it's this, just inner sense of well-being and innate goodness and, just being able to be comfortable and safe in that.
So this idea of really being able to, I guess, without any kind of stimulus, just enjoy your life, right?
Yeah.
Kind of present.
Yeah. Anytime, anywhere. Exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, my final question for you, and we can end on this note. We can either end with a quote that you like. We can end with a final tip for other creators out there in the audience looking to launch campaigns, or just a word of encouragement, anything like that. And we can end on that note.
Well, I guess one thing I can say is that Mingyur Rinpoche often says that the entire path, meaning of meditation and the journey to well-being, is just a shift in perspective. And so it's that simple. And, if we can, and that works in so many aspects of our lives, Sal, whether it's overcoming the anxiety of starting a Kickstarter campaign or anything else, often just a shift in perspective makes all the difference.
Well said. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it, and good luck with your remaining 12 days here on Kickstarter.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, and I hope that you took a lot of value out of today's episode. If nothing else, the encouragement, the go-ahead to actually get out there and to launch your campaign. I think there are so many incredible tidbits of wisdom that were, shared in today's episode. One that really stuck out to me is just the opportunity that's available by using this mechanism, which is people get excited when you're building momentum, when they see the funding meter going up and up, they want to participate in your next campaign. And there are so many ways that whether you have an existing business or you're growing a new business or a new product line, that you can actually get involved and use crowdfunding as a way to fuel your dreams, to fuel your passion, and more importantly, to go out there and to be able to create something new, whether it's a new technology gadget or a gizmo. It could be a new physical product. It could be a card game, a board game. It could be a software product. To me, crowdfunding is one of those incredible methods that must be in your toolbox if you want to be able to do this right and incorporate the crowd into your launch. And a lot of creators will come to me and they're like, Sal, I love the podcast, but I need something that's a little bit more personalized. Hearing all these stories is exciting, but I got some questions I need answers to. And if Google is not doing it for you and you really want to talk to an expert when it comes to this, I've made myself available via individual one-on-one coaching calls. You can actually book an intensive coaching call with me, and you can go through the entire layout of what you need for a successful campaign. I can start, first of all, when it comes to if you're just in the idea stage, how do you move from that until having a fully finished product? If you're in the prototype stage, what do you need to know in order to test that, to validate that, to begin to build a crowd leading up to the launch of your campaign? If you're already live, what do you got to do in order to blow past your funding goal and to raise more than you ever imagined? This is an investment in the foundation of a brand that's growing into the future, of a product that's going to impact the world for the positive. And if you want to have the proper guidance going into that launch, go and book an individual one-on-one coaching call with me at this link, crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. We'll take you there. You can watch a great video that I've put on that page. You can scroll down, you can book a call with me, and we can get that call scheduled ASAP. Just tell me a little bit about you, your project, what you're passionate about, and we'll get that call going ASAP so we can make an impact on your journey. Thank you so much. My name is Salvador Briggman. Go and check out me on YouTube. I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on the Instagrams. I'm on X. Check me out wherever you love to get your information. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.